Collaborating with the group from Salle, Mexico was definitely a unique experience to say the least. It was truly interesting to see that despite being from countries halfway around the world, both groups still had similar sentiments regarding social media and its use in our respective countries. Although both groups still had differing points that were distinct from the Philippines or from Mexico. Wherein in this video we will be discussing those aforementioned points by both groups and then comparing and contrasting them from each other.
Social media in the Philippines has its impacts and effects. Together with my groupmates in the Philippines, we tackled the impact of social media on the Philippines and its citizens, its advantages and disadvantages, and its effect on the mental health of Filipinos. After talking about how social media affects the Philippines and its people, we discovered that 68% of Filipinos are media users. And as time goes on, that percentage will rise as social media became a part of the Philippine culture before the pandemic until now. Social media being part of our culture has its advantages and disadvantages. We tackled the advantages of social media in the Philippines, such as social media being able to provide connection to our relatives and even to strangers from all parts of the world, as well as social awareness and surveillance, which help social media consumers to be knowledgeable with the most recent issues and topics. Furthermore, social media has the ability to educate its users with all the accessible information online. Another way to attain information with the use of social media is by building a global village of learners through online communities, forums, and interactions. Lastly, our group discussed that social media could also be a platform for artists and entrepreneurs as it arranges consumers and audiences for their products. Aside from social media's advantages, our group also conversed about its disadvantages, and compared to the advantages, the disadvantages of social media are more. However, it has a great impact on its consumers. Mental health risks are one of the known detriments of social media because too much social media consumption can lead to and trigger anxiety, insomnia, and depression. Aside from this, social media can be a platform to encourage and enact criminal activities and produce a hostile atmosphere, as these platforms are beneficial in managing crimes and acts.
During our collaboration with Salle, Mexico, we were able to share and discuss the impact of social media on our daily interactions. And for them, it's a central part of a teenager's life to always be connected online. First, we discussed social media's consequences on mental health.
She used to be like a normal teenager, high schooler, and now she's like very famous and she has a lot, very huge impact in many people's lives.
So in Mexico, researchers have found signs that the constant exposure to violent and shocking images on Twitter and Facebook have led people to become desensitized. And common mental health problems in their country would include mood and anxiety disorders. So people are now turning towards their social network sites, like the most popular one in Mexico being WhatsApp in 2022, to be able to express themselves and inform them about the latest news. Then on to worldwide connection. For many Mexican teenagers, social media provides a way for them to reconnect with their friends and family outside of the country and strengthen community ties.
I also think an advantage of social media could be like communication. I have like family members in other part of the world that I can write them through Instagram or through Snapchat or something like that. So communication have really improved in the social media matter.
It's a quick way for them to share their culture and acts as a lifeline for them in times of crisis. But the need to constantly be online and connected can also have negative effects. This leads to day-to-day dependency. A study in 2019 found that half of Mexican teenagers felt that they were spending too much time on their phones and felt addicted. A collab group mentioned that if they're not yet socializing, then they're constantly communicating and checking their phone for updates.
If you think about it, at least in our culture, it's very common that if you're not talking with your friends, you're definitely on your phone, checking Instagram or TikTok or whatever, and you're always using it.
This high dependency on social media usage can affect their sleep schedules and create a fear of missing out. And with the lockdown and social distancing restrictions, this has only increased social media dependence during the pandemic. worsening the mental health conditions and stress among young adults in Mexico as their hygiene and eating habits have changed over time. Our collab group also mentioned that everyone became more active online and interlinked to their devices.
While the pandemic was taking place, we all were in social media and we were doing a lot of things. So I would say it is the most important thing. I mean, it has the advantages but also the disadvantage.
This can be both a good and bad thing as we're constantly consuming information while our attention is distracted. As we navigate our new reality in the pandemic, our collaboration with Salle Mexico reminded us that finding balance in social media usage is the key.
Now to compare and contrast the discussed information regarding social media in the Philippines and Mexico. So here is a quick recap of the research and discussed topics from earlier, which have been divided between the similarities and differences. So for the similarities, we both utilize social media to stay connected with our relatives abroad. In our case, we mentioned with our OFWs. Second is social media is a big part of our lives, with the Philippines having 68% of the overall population using social media, while in Mexico, the statistics mention about 71% of parents and 67% of teens use their phones almost all the time. Lastly, social media impacts our mental health. So both countries mentioned how social media contributed or increased users' anxiety, insomnia, addiction, and depression, just to name a few. So for the differences, social media has been a big part of the Philippines even before the pandemic, while in Mexico, they increased their usage during the pandemic. Social media has sensitized the online users from Mexico. So from my understanding, their constant exposure to the content regarding the ongoing drug wars and violence has numbed them to shocking images or news about those occurrences in their country. And for the last difference, social media being utilized as a platform for crime in the Philippines. So I think we're well aware of how rampant phishing scams and other online cybercrimes are in our country, which would most often target those who are vulnerable or who lack knowledge about these scams.
After discussing with other members of our collaborative group, our group came to the conclusion that although Mexico and the Philippines are different countries, we generally experience the same issues when utilizing social media. Every individual has their own perspective on how they will digest the media content they see. We cannot teach or force someone on how they will take what they read. At the end of the day, it is up to ourselves to limit the use of social media.